Book lovers, book buyers, book enthusiasts, and TBR fanatics, my name is Trisha, and welcome to Trisha by the Book. In this video, I'm sharing the very best books that I read in 2025 in each of these genres. So buckle up because this list has something to thrill, amaze, and haunt you. I'm going to cover thriller and sci-fi in this video. For fantasy, horror, and classics, please hop over to part 2 of this video. Right, starting off strong with thriller. Why? Because I read the most thriller books last year. I think I read around 30 books, and I'm so excited to share my honorable mentions as well as my top 3. First book I'm going to talk about is His and Hers by Alice Sweeney. His and Hers by Alice Sweeney is a sharp, twisty thriller where a true crime journalist and her detective ex-husband circle the same murder, each hiding secrets that make the truth way more dangerous than the case itself. There's a series also out on Netflix, and as a tip, I would suggest listen to the audiobook. It just adds to the grim atmosphere. A murder is announced by Agatha Christie. A small village is puzzled when a newspaper announces that a murder will take place at a specific house at a specific time. And when residents gather out of curiosity and someone actually dies, Miss Marple must unravel who amongst the guests is the killer. The Family Experiment by John Maas. This third installment in the Dark Future series by John Maas is a chilling, speculative thriller where virtual children, reality TV, and moral dilemmas collide to question what family truly means in a digital age. Now to the top 3 thriller books I read in 2025. In number 3, we have We Need to Talk About Kevin by Lionel Shriver. We Need to Talk About Kevin is a haunting psychological drama. It dissects motherhood, guilt, and making of a killer through the lens of Kevin's mother, Ava. So the entire book is from the perspective of Kevin's mom, Ava, and Ava writes these raw confessional letters to her estranged husband, Franklin, dissecting her trauma, her guilt, her doubts on the aftermath of raising Kevin as a child. And let me tell you, Kevin is creepy, he's weird, and those two are understatements. Kevin and Ava, they have really tumultuous mother-son relationship, and throughout the chapters, Ava is really explaining to Franklin how she felt before she gave birth to Kevin and how she felt while raising Kevin as a mother. And for sure, Kevin has his own quirks. As a child, he was a little aloof. He would not listen to Ava at all. And that kind of escalates as he grows older as well. But it really about something shocking that Kevin does, which makes Ava looks back and either blames herself or tries to find who is to blame, and why Kevin is the way Kevin is. I mean, the book is called We Need to Talk About Kevin, but I think it's her own baggage that she wanted to, it's her own baggage and it's her own guilt that she needed to just ward off. So what really fascinated me is the way it made me question where the blame truly lies. Is it the mother? Is it the father? Is it Kevin himself? Is it the society? Like, who is to blame when a child grows up to be such a nuisance? What I also liked about this book was the psychological depth that went into, the complexities of motherhood, and it did not shy away from asking really uncomfortable questions, which I don't have an answer to, but it was good to see that perspective in a book. It talks a lot about nature versus nurture. We see so many bad people out there in the world. Like, who is to blame? Is it the nurture that is to blame, or is it the nature, or is it both? Sometimes you have an answer and sometimes you absolutely don't. And that just is the worst because it makes you feel so helpless. There's also a movie which is equally unsettling. And as soon as I read the book, you already know what I did. I went and watched the movie. In number 2, we have Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. Rebecca. I was holding off on that book for a while, and I'm so glad I read it last year. It is such a gothic masterpiece. Again, is a psychological thriller. I really like books where you don't know where exactly the book itself is going. A lot of thriller books like know that there's a death coming or someone's getting murdered, and then we're going to find out, which I love. I love those as well. I love gruesome murders, but it is so atmospheric. And reading through the book, I could not realize, I really couldn't understand, is it a thriller? Is it a love story, or is it a horror story? Like, I couldn't pinpoint it. It could go either way. And I, of course, heard a lot of things about Rebecca being gothic, and I love gothic genre as well. And it's really well made. I loved it. So the story is about Rebecca, who is a humble companion to an elderly woman who is vacationing in Monte Carlo, and there she meets the enigmatic Maxim de Winter. Everyone knows who Maxim is. Apparently, he's a really rich guy and he has a lovely estate called Manderley. Think Gatsby, but English. Days passed and they both end up having a whirlwind romance, and Rebecca's world just goes upside down when she becomes Mrs. Maxim de Winter and the new mistress of the Manderley estate. So Rebecca had heard so many good things about Manderley Estate, the parties they used to throw, how it was the most beautiful estate in all of the England. And she was so excited to go there. But when she goes, she realizes that it's not what everyone says about Manderley Estate. She feels a creeping presence there. She experiences things in there within herself, with some guests that have been coming to Manderley, with the staff of Manderley, with her own husband. So something is off and Rebecca can sniff it from a mile. Now, what really is happening at Manderley and what's happening with Rebecca? Is she jealous? Is she scared? Is she guilty? This entire thing just adds into the gothic, haunting atmosphere that the book is written. The prose, oh, it's hauntingly beautiful. So there's really a good payoff at the end. There is a twist, and that's what makes Rebecca one of my favorite reads. It was engrossing at its best. Now, the best read that I had under thriller category was The Kind Word Killing by Peter Swanson. Now, fans of Hitchcock's Stranger on the Train will eat this up because it's a modern psychological thriller where chance encounter meets deadly conspiracies. So during a flight, this guy named Ted meets our mysterious Lily, and they both start stalking, they're having drinks, they're talking about their lives, and somehow they end up making a deadly pact to kill for each other. Now, that really is the preface of the entire story. There are other characters involved in it as well, but what really dwells into this deadly pact is cat and mouse story. Who's getting hunted, who's killing, that's just part of the entire surprise. What I really love about this book was Lily's character. I loved her. She is so headstrong. She's not the kind of woman who waits for a white knight to save her. She saves herself, and that's all I'm gonna say. I really like how confident she is, and I love the fact that she is all for friendship. It has a really twisty plots. There are shocks and turns and misdirections through and throughout the book. There are some really morally ambiguous characters that I like. Not all good characters are bad and not all bad characters are good. So I really like those kind of books where characters are just little gray. There is for sure a Hitchcockian suspense. It gives me a lot of eerie vibes, and I really like books that have unreliable narration, and I think this one is a little bit on that side. The next category is sci-fi. We Can Do It For You Wholesale by Philip K. Dick. This is a short story about a man who dreams of going to Mars and visits a company that implants fake vacation memories, but the procedure reveals he may or may not have actually been to Mars as a secret agent. Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. In a dystopian future where books are banned and firemen burn any they find, a fireman named Guy Montag begins to question his role after meeting a free-thinking young woman and secretly reading the books he's supposed to destroy. All Systems Read by Martha Wells. A self-aware security robot who calls itself a Murderbot has hacked its own programming to gain freedom. But instead of going on a killing spree, it just wants to be left alone to binge-watch TV shows. Until it has to actually protect the humans in its care from a deadly conspiracy. Now my top 3 from sci-fi. Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep by Philip K. Dick. Rick Deckard is a bounty hunter who dreams of one day owning a real sheep in a bleak dystopian world where plants, animals, and even genuine people are scarce. Through this journey, the novel explores identity, empathy, and morality in a world where the line between man and machine is hauntingly thin. What I loved about this book is that it asks a very simple and timeless question. What does it mean to be a human? Does machines have empathy? These questions really helped me think beyond the surface of the novel, and that's why this is at my number 3. And of course, I love the atmospheric world building. The post-apocalyptic San Francisco really honed into the haunting backdrop that just sucked me in. Number 2, A Scanner Darkly by Philip K. Dick. I was clearly having a moment with this author. I was having a hard time to decide which one of his books I need to put on this list. In Philip K. Dick's A Scanner Darkly, Bob Arctor is a narcotics agent who gets caught in a psychedelic blur where duty and addiction collide. His fractured reality becomes a haunting trip through identity, paranoia, and the dizzying cost of surveillance. I love the themes of surveillance and control. I think Philip K. Dick really explored the constant monitoring and the loss of privacy that's surprisingly very relevant to our present. I think the author bringing in his own emotional honesty was so refreshing. This is very much different than Philip K. Dick's other works, where in this book he has really brought in his personal experience and has reflected on his own addiction, which I think it's very brave and commendable. Reading this book was a trip because I felt like I was on something. Like the conversations the characters were having, their internal monologues, I felt like I'm losing the plot, and I was constantly going over the pages, going back, going front, just to understand, hey, did this really happen or was he just tripping? In addition to that, the entire prose was really funny. What I've realized about Philip K. Dick is that he's also a funny author. His prose tend to be really towards the funny side. His other works, You Bake, We Can Do It For You Wholesale, also has some funny elements here and there. And it just balances out the heavy sci-fi world building and the humor. A Scanner Darkly was really funny. There were times where I was just laughing so hard reading, like, what are they thinking? And it was a really surreal and a very different experience reading this book. Definitely check that out if you're into Philip K. Dick, sci-fi, or even fun. One thing that I realized about Philip K. Dick's work, and this may be just a personal opinion, I don't think he's the most literary writer in, sci-fi genre. His prose may not be the most poetic. They may have some plot holes here and there, but I'm not reading his work for that. I'm reading his work to understand his brain. I'm reading his work to understand how he comes up with these vibrant imaginations that I can never even imagine. All of his books are so different, so new, and he's written this long way back, and they're still relevant in these times. There's a reason why so many of Philip K. Dick's work has been adapted into movies, and they've been all great movies. So I'm so glad that I got to read a lot of his books last year, and definitely A Scanner Darkly was on my number 2 favorite. If you guys want me to do another video on Philip K. Dick's work altogether, I can definitely do that. I mean, I have read most of his books this year. Also, I'm going to read some of the leftover ones. So please do tell me in the comments if you want to see those. Now, my favorite sci-fi book of 2025 is Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. A lone astronaut, an impossible mission, and an ally he'd never imagined. This literally was the blurb. Project Hail Mary is my favorite sci-fi read of 2025. Probably one of my favorite reads of 2025 altogether. Project Hail Mary follows Rylan Grace, a lone astronaut who's in a distant ship, but he has no memory at all of why and when he was on this ship. But he has a mission to complete which can decide the fate of the Earth. As he pieces together his past and present and an impossible challenge, his journey becomes a gripping tale of science, resilience, and an unexpected companionship. I love that this book was a giant puzzle for me, for Ryland Grace. We both were kind of figuring things out. I started figuring things out as soon as that Ryland Grace was figuring things out. And he was really playing high stakes puzzle because it was all about survival. Survival for him in the middle of the space, survival for the Earth. So I found that really interesting. And our protagonist was really clever. I love the fact that even with his memory gone, he was trying to piece things together. And that just added to the excitement. I was so rooting for him throughout the book. There was not one place where I thought that I hate the character because it's too sciencey or it's too complicated. No, it was simple. Even though this was a sci-fi book, it was heavily about life in space, survival, science, but it was also about human emotions. It was very much about Rylance's journey, his personal life as well. So as he's figuring things out, like as he's gaining his memory back, he is going back to his life, what he has learned throughout. So it just had a lot of emotional appeal as well. It did not feel like a science book. It didn't feel like I was reading a science fiction book. This book also had a lot of humor. And in my opinion, if there is one universal language throughout the entire universe, it's humor. It's comedy. And I think no matter what language you speak, if you're doing something funny, people will understand. So that's it, guys. These were my top genre reads of 2025. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe.